The Sports Car Vintage Racing Association is the largest vintage racing company in the world. Thanks to SVRA, vintage racing has become the fastest growing segment in motorsports for the past 5 years, boasting the largest, most eclectic and exotic fields in the country while racing at the most prestigious and iconic road racing circuits in America. However, what separates SVRA from the others in our space is the emphasis of the overall experience for our competitors, spectators, and marketing partners. SVRA strives to produce a unique experience that will entertain and excite motorsports enthusiasts and non-enthusiasts alike. In 2019, we launched Speed Tour. Speed Tour, the greatest show in road racing, is an overall fan-engaging festival-like concept with SVRA, the Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli, International GT, and V-Rock, the Vintage Race of Champions. Speed Tour has everything to draw in that critical mass of spectators, and in just a short amount of time, we have seen our spectator counts double. SVRA brings the huge fields of vintage race cars, Trans Am, best known for its modern American muscle cars, International GT with its modern European exotics, and V-Rock brings in the huge legends of motorsports to race with us in a charity pro-am in vintage American muscle cars. But it's not just about the on-track excitement. The festival atmosphere stretches into the paddocks and parking lots with the Jaguar Autocross, the Land Rover Off-Road Experience, the Hagerty Cars and Caffeine car shows and parade laps around these wonderful circuits, the concerts, banquets, parties, and dinners. But the fans mostly love the paddocks and garages that are open to the public to talk with our drivers and get up close to these fantastic machines, getting autographs, taking selfies, and even getting to sit in these fantastic cars. SVRA and Speed Tour are working hard to create events that everyone will enjoy, keeping ticket prices low and offering family ticket incentives, driving that critical mass to our event. We are dedicated to bringing motorsports back to that golden age when racing events were fun, entertaining, and all-inclusive. The Sebring Speed Tour returned to Sebring International Raceway for the first weekend in March of 2019. Fantastic Florida weather and good crowds greeted us in Sebring, and all of our drivers were eager to shake down their cars to start the new season. SVRA brought hundreds of vintage cars racing in 12 classes throughout the weekend, and there were some very nice, noteworthy cars on the track all weekend. Two of the crowd favorites were from our newcomers that just went through our driver's school just weeks earlier, Ken Twaits in his Audi R8 and Vito in his beautiful 1971 Ferrari 365 GTB4. MG, my favorite mark, was the featured mark for this event, and the all-MG race was maybe one of the best battles for first place all weekend long. But in true MG fashion, we had over 20 cars show up for the weekend. 12 made the Sunday starting grid, and 8 finished the Sunday race. Group 6 was fun to watch at every outing, with Porsches battling it out with the huge American muscle cars. Mike Skinner put on a great show in Group 10 with his Toyota trucks from the NASCAR series. The racing is always great in the small bore production class with cars that may have raced here decades ago. But Group 11 had some great racing in a class of cars that may have raced here fairly recently at Sebring. International GT brought a huge field of modern Porsches and Ferraris and very closely contested battles throughout the weekend in all categories. Rob Blake and Juan Lopez Santini up front with the GT4Rs, Tom Pank and the Fall Line Motorsports guys in the 3.8 liter class. Newcomer Gianna Torino in a Ferrari F430 took the top step in the largest Maranello Cup field in series history. We also had Alex Welch join us in an Audi R8. This was the first event in the 2019 season for International GT, and it was extremely fun to watch. The Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli started their 2019 season at Sebring. And this is fitting because Trans Am began at Sebring in 1966, making it the longest running road racing series in America. The 2019 season started off with a bang. All the big names from Trans Am were back and running up front in all their groups. Vinny Allegretti got off to a great start, but had to come into the pits after the first lap, and Lawrence Loshak led the race the rest of the way.
We start the season on a win.
TA2 was a tough battle with last year's champ Rafa Matos up front the entire way, but the battle for podium was between Mark Miller, Scott Lagasse Jr., Tony Buffamonte, and Dylan McIvern. Rafa led the entire race, but with a late restart, it was not an easy race to win. In the SGT class, Mark Bowden from Fall Line fought hard to keep Lee Saunders behind him, but Lee took the top step in SGT, followed by Mark Bowden and Tom Herb from Fall Line Motorsports. And in the GT class, it was Jeff Courtney in the Maserati ahead of the two Aston Martins. But the Sebring Speed Tour isn't just about the racing. Saturday, Hagerty hosted their Cars and Caffeine show in the infield with a record-breaking number of cars, and then those fantastic cars got to have some parade laps on this world-famous circuit. Saturday night, we held a great dinner banquet with some comments from our Grand Marshal, five-time Le Mans winner Derek Bell.
And went and did a pretty good race, and so Mr. Ferrari asked me to go back to his team to race at Le Mans. And in those days, two men used to do the 24 hours when men were men. I think I'm right in saying that, aren't I?
The Sebring Speed Tour was a great start to the 2019 season, and we can't wait to see what else 2019 has to offer. But now, we are off to the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta for the Atlanta Speed Tour, March 29th through the 31st, featuring the first race of the V-Rock Series. See you there. The Atlanta Speed Tour returned to Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, featuring the Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli, SVRA, International GT, and V-Rock, the Vintage Race of Champions. The second round of the Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli got heated quickly. The TA SGT early morning Sunday race started out wet, and the SGT drivers with the rain tires quickly took the lead. But as the track dried, the big 850 plus horsepower TA cars came roaring back. In TA2, it was as close as always between Misha Goikhberg, 2018 TA2 champion Rafa Matos, Mark Miller, Dylan McIvern, Scott Lagasse Jr., and West Coast champion Tom Merrill. The first few laps were intense, but unfortunately, Tom Merrill had to go out with a clutch issue. Later on in the race, with Rafa Matos leading, he had to endure 3 restarts, with teammates Mark Miller and Dylan McIvern right behind him trying to overtake. Rafa Matos finished first, Mark Miller second, Dylan McIvern third. Chevy, Dodge, and Ford, the big 3 on the podium once again in Trans Am. Trans Am put on a great show, but I think the fan favorite of the weekend was the V-Rock race. The Vintage Race of Champions is where SVRA pairs amateur owner drivers of ultra-cool 60s and 70s American muscle cars with former huge-name professional drivers to battle it out on the track for a great cause. Mike and Angie Skinner brought us the non-profit that this event benefited, Hope for the Warriors, that helps our wounded soldiers and families. Friday night's benefit dinner and auction was the best I have witnessed, and we raised over $50,000 for the cause. Race day in the V-Rock fan walk on the hot pits. Then it was clear the grid, the race is about to begin. It was fantastic racing in the A production class and in the B production class.
And here he comes, Mike Skinner, Bentham Allison Jr. to win the first V-Rock of the season.
And the fans love seeing these drivers back in a race car and having fun on the podium once again.
Oh! Come on, let me hear it, ladies and gentlemen. B production, Michelin Raceway, Road Atlanta.
International GT had another huge turnout in a field of car and drivers who seemed to turn up the heat for round 2 of the International GT Championship. Maybe it was the introduction of the Audi R8 of Alex Welch, but 2017 Mission Foods Cup Trophy champion Tom Pank came to Road Atlanta with an even bigger engine package, and Mark Sandrich found himself in a new car for the 2019 season. IGT had phenomenal racing all weekend long. SVRA had fantastic racing throughout the weekend in all groups. The Group 1 2019 championship is heating up with 5-time champion Hawaii Dave Nicholas trying to fend off Andy the Scott McLean and Scott Frazier in Kermit the Frog Eye Sprite. All 3 of them have won 2 races this season. The Miatas put on another great show for the fans, as did the stock cars of Group 10 and the open wheel cars of Group 2 and 9. It was another great Atlanta Speed Tour, and we have bigger and better plans for next year. Stay tuned. The Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli and the Sports Car Vintage Racing Association brought the greatest show in road racing to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca in Monterey, California for the first annual Trans Am Speed Fest. The Trans Am Series raced at Laguna Seca 50 years ago in 1969, and now we are back in full force with the Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli at the Trans Am Speed Fest with a celebration of over 50 years of cars that raced in Trans Am, America's longest running road racing series. Historic Trans Am was here with huge fields of the actual cars that raced in the series set up just as they were from 1966 to 1972. As always, they put on a great show for the spectators to see just how these cars handled this circuit 50 years ago. Friday evening, we gathered a huge field of Trans Am cars for a photo shoot Friday night on the main straight, celebrating the over 50 years of Trans Am cars represented at the Trans Am Speed Fest. Saturday was the TA, SGT, and GT feature race. We had a fan walk where all the fans got to meet the drivers and get autographs. Lawrence Loshak, who is leading the points in TA in a Chevy Camaro, qualified P2 to 21-year-old and 5-time Trans Am champion Ernie Francis Jr. qualifying P1 in his Ford Mustang. It was a close battle between the two for the first few laps, and it was close racing throughout the field in all groups. In SVRA, we had hundreds of beautiful cars fighting to qualify their best times to get up front for the start of the Sunday feature races. Then Saturday night, we hosted a party and reception at the Revival Road Company just down the hill from the track. A live band, food trucks, great atmosphere, and a fun time with friends. It was a fantastic party. Then Sunday was race day for all groups in SVRA, and we had some fantastic groups of cars. Then I think everyone would agree the best race of the weekend was the TA2 race with a huge field of cars from the big three, Chevy, Ford, and Dodge, just like it was here 50 years ago. The story of the race was from local racer Thomas Merrill, who was fast in qualifying, but due to a mechanical, he had to start at the back. Mark Miller started P1, and as soon as the green flag dropped, Thomas Merrill started putting on a clinic of overtaking and passed 11 or 12 cars in the first lap. Thomas got some luck early on in the race with a few full course cautions, and in under 10 laps found himself in 4th place. He slowly, methodically moved his way through the field and was able to take advantage of lap traffic to take first place over Mark Miller. Dylan McIverna and Mark Miller had to chase Thomas the rest of the race, and it was very exciting to watch. But the Trans Am Speedfest is not just about the racing. We had a huge Hagerty Cars and Caffeine car show in the infield with the Bay Area Cobra Club coming out in full force. You could test your skills in a brand new Jaguar on the Jaguar Autocross, or try your hand in a brand new Land Rover or Range Rover in the Land Rover Off-Road Experience. This was such a fantastic first time for the Speed Tour to come to WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca for the Trans Am Speedfest. This is an annual event, and we can't wait to come back next year, making this event even bigger and better. Speed Tour goes to the beautiful Lime Rock Park in Lakeville, Connecticut for the Memorial Day Classic featuring the Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli, SVRA, and International GT. Memorial Day weekend has traditionally been a huge event at Lime Rock Park, and with the Trans Am Series being back to headline the Memorial Day Classic, we wanted to do our part to put on a great show for these huge crowds. The long weekend, beautiful weather, and park-like setting made for a great canvas for families to come out and enjoy a fantastically diverse weekend of motorsports and machinery. The Saturday TA2 race was one of the best I have ever seen, starting with a huge fan walk on pit lane for the crowd to get to meet and greet the drivers and get up close and personal with the cars. As always, the start of the TA2 race was something to be seen, and they put on a show for all the fans scattered around this 1.5-mile circuit. Thomas Merrill started P1 in his Skip Barber Racing School Mike Cote Mustang, with Dylan McIverna right behind him in the Liqui-Moly Ford Mustang. It seemed Dylan may have had the faster car, but just couldn't seem to get around Thomas. Thomas took the win, Dylan got second, and Scott Lagasse Jr. got third and celebrated in front of the huge Lime Rock Park crowd who came to cheer for the close racing. Sunday was the Royals Garage Car Show presented by Hagerty, and I have to admit, this might be my favorite car show I have experienced.
The fun continues. Here we are on Sunday, because we don't race on Sunday, but we pulled together what I think is a pretty cool car show with Hagerty, and it just speaks to the car culture, and this place is amazing. I mean, yesterday's crowd was off the charts, and today, you know, another glorious day to celebrate Memorial Weekend, and tomorrow, full day of racing ahead of us. What a great first experience coming to Lime Rock. I'm so thankful to be here.
This was a very indiscriminate car show with everything any car enthusiast would want to see. The theme of the car show seemed to be, if you have a cool car, we want it in this show, which made for a community of enthusiasts eager to share their cars and stories with anyone who would listen. Then Monday, Memorial Day, we started with the SVRA races, and we did not disappoint. The Small Bore Sports Car Group was a fantastic race with a diverse mix of great cars. I couldn't decide which I liked better between David Porter and his Red Lotus Cortina or Simon Kirkby and his Hillman Imp. Groups 5, 7, and 9 had some great racing. Ben Sinnott took off in his cool 97 Lola T97, and then near the end of the race came up to lap the two cars fighting for second, with Jacek Muka in the Swift and Rick Bell in the 78 Ralt RT1. Ben tried for several laps to try to get by these two, but then just decided to play it safe and hang back and watch the battle for himself. Group 6 was a fun race to watch, and as always, a crowd favorite. But I think the vintage race of the weekend may have been in groups 8 and 12, with Ray Zisa in the Vet, Joe Viola in the Orange 240Z, Joe Riola in the Blue-Green 240Z, and Bryce Bandish in the BMW E30 M3. These guys stayed close and swapped positions the entire race, and ultimately, Ray Zisa said he won by a fender. International GT had some great action, with guest Guy Cosmo even joining in for a few sessions in his AMG Mercedes. Locals Paul and John Reisman had a blast on their home track, as well as the other father-son team of Mark and Joseph Bowden. Newcomer Steve Katz put on a huge air show for the fans on the uphill, and the 2017 Mission Foods GT3 champion John Morrow coached newcomer Mike Williams to a few podium finishes over the weekend. IGT also got to bring special guests, the Frankel family from the Drive It Forward program, and their son Jack got to experience a ride in the pace car. But the story of the weekend belongs to local racer Chris Dyson in the Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli. Chris was injured in a racing incident with another group just days before and was not sure if he would be able to race at his home track. Chris put the car on pole in qualifying and was just fast in his 850-plus horsepower Mustang and had a great race with two-time TA champ Ernie Francis Jr. and Josh Hurley in the green Camaro. Chris Dyson worked hard to fend these guys off and made it to the top step of the podium. Mark Bowden had his Fall Line Motorsports Porsche dialed in, and Brian Kleeman struggled to keep up in his new Ford Mustang in the SGT class. Finishing a promising third was series newcomer in a really pretty black Mustang, Adam Lostowski, showing some speed in his first time out with the Trans Am Series. It was a storybook ending to a rough week for Chris Dyson, and it was a great first weekend with Trans Am, SVRA, and International GT for the Memorial Day Classic. This is an annual event, and we plan to make it even bigger and better next year. Thank you to all the great fans who came out to cheer for our drivers. You made this event so much fun for us. We will see you next year. Speed Tour returned to Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course featuring SVRA and scores of beautiful vintage race cars, the Mazda Miata Heritage Cup, and International GT with a full field of modern Porsches, Ferraris, and new to the series, the Audi R8. First of all, we want to thank all the dedicated spectators that came out to support the 37th annual Vintage Grand Prix of Mid-Ohio. Early in the week, the weather forecasts were bleak, but Saturday and Sunday the weather was near perfect. Mid-Ohio is always a favorite for the drivers and spectators because it is a difficult track to master, and we had some great races in all groups to prove this. Let me start with an uplifting story about a young spectator that I have seen at this event for the past 6 or 7 years. For years, Dylan would sit with his family on the hill, and whenever the races went green or full course yellow or checkered flag, he would wave a flag from the hill to help alert the drivers. Last year, I asked him why he was doing this, and he told me he always wanted to be a corner worker, but he wasn't quite old enough. This year, I am happy to report that he is now old enough, and I saw Dylan living the dream and working the corners at Mid-Ohio. And this weekend we needed good corner workers because we had some full fields of cars, starting with my favorite, the smaller bore production cars. 40 cars signed up for this group, and the racing was intense throughout the field. John DeGaynor and George F. Ballback had an intense battle for first, swapping positions a few times. A large field of sports 2000s, and they had some of the best races of the weekend.
They're in the third spot, begins to close in just a little bit, but some great battles behind. Really close one between the 77A and the 83, Rodney Kendall and Mark Coombs.
The ground-pounding big bore production cars are always a crowd favorite, and they did not disappoint. With the always fast Pontiac Firebird of Scott Graham, the Ford Falcon of Frank Markham, Mike Donahue and his '63 Corvette all mixing it up. Ultimately, though, it was Jody O'Donnell in his black 69 Corvette and Scott Borchetta in his red 72 Corvette, finishing first and second in each of the races.
Yeah, how was that for you guys?
But you know what? I'm going to keep racing until I beat him. You know, Jody.
It was exhausting. It was exhausting. I kept waiting for that thing to fade, and you can't miss this color. And I was like, God, he just won't go away.
I think this is our first time for both of us here, right?
Yeah.
So Mid-Ohio sports car track, great track.
Great. I love it.
The Mazda Miata Heritage Cup was close as usual. Mark Cefalo and Jonathan Davis never got out of throwing distance of each other in all of the races. Mark Cefalo won race number 1, and Jonathan Davis won race number 2. As far as individual cars go, I think the crowd favorites were the Formula cars, like the 2015 Dallara Formula 2 car of Jerome Mee, or Malcolm Ross in the 1989 Ferrari 640 Formula 1 former Nigel Mansell car that just sounded amazing. The competition at International GT was fantastic as usual at Mid-Ohio. About half of this field calls Mid-Ohio home, so like always, we had some great racing with a full field of Ferraris and Porsches. But don't forget about the newcomer to IGT, Ken Thwaites, in his Audi R8 having an epic battle for second with Tom Pank. Mark Sandridge won both races overall, but the crowds got to see great battles throughout the field with some fantastic cars. International GT is becoming a crowd favorite at this event. And this is an event with wonderful parties and barbecues Friday and Saturday night.
We're having a shrimp boil for all the Corvair folks and anybody else who's invited, or anybody that just wants shrimp.
We only brought 50 pounds of shrimp. I think we can feed a few people.
We had lots of cool cars come out for the car shows and parade laps around the track. You could test out a brand new Alfa Romeo and even get hot laps around the track. But the event, the race that everyone was waiting for, was the Corvair-only feature race on Sunday. Everyone was amazed that there were this many Corvair race cars and owners that still somehow had these cars running. Who doesn't love a Corvair? And then to see this many fighting hard around this technical track, I can't think of a more entertaining form of racing.
Jeff Rapp and then Norman Latulipe in that 4th spot right now. The rest of the field all closely bunched together, and nose to tail here as they head around turn 6.
Norman Latulip came in 3rd, Logan Dernoshik got 2nd, and Jim Shart finished 1st in a really fun race to watch. Thank you to all the Corvair family for making this happen and having such a great time.
He took me to school. I think our cars were pretty even. He just outdrove me. So we're 1-1 now, Jim. We're 1-1. You got to race one more time.
You let me have it, didn't you?
No. Once you got behind me.
Well, that does it for the 37th Vintage Grand Prix of Mid-Ohio. What a fantastic event. Thank you to all of the drivers, crew, and especially the loyal spectators that make this event so much fun. We can't wait for the 38th. SVRA coming to you from Watkins Glen International, giddy with excitement watching my favorite group blast up the S's here at Watkins Glen. And this is the race report from the Hillier US Vintage Grand Prix at Watkins Glen 2018. morning, people started pouring in to see some great racing, and we set attendance records for this event yet again.
What can I say but Watkins Glen, we love you. And it's not just about the cars or the track, it is all about the people and the atmosphere.
How do I describe an event that has so much to see and do? Imagine camping at a beautiful state park with all of your closest friends while over 300 of the coolest cars blast around this track right in front of you. Thursday evening, we hosted a party at the International Motor Racing Research Center and honored our Grand Marshal David Hobbs with his plaque and the Walk of Fame. Then we had some fun smashing a Lego Mini with James Steer's 1964 Mini Cooper S for a video that we will release later. But as always, everybody was getting amped up for Friday night as we brought some of the best vintage race cars down the hill into the village of Watkins Glen to take part in the downtown reenactment, where thousands of people got to see these fantastic machines do a few laps on the old circuit that really brought road racing back to America after the war. But Saturday, it was easy to see the huge crowds were here to see some great racing in all groups, and we did not disappoint. The Mini Cooper was a featured mark, and we had over 20 Minis on hand racing in a full Group 1 field on Saturday. Then they got their own feature race on Sunday. We had a great battle for first in Group 2 with the Formula Bs of Travis Engen and Bruce Hamilton. Groups 3, 4, and 5 had close racing throughout the field, but especially between David Zawetsky and his green Devin Healy Special, Bill Shawacki in his 1955 Corvette, and Stephen Davison in his 1962 Jaguar E-Type Coupe. Group 8 had a huge field of such an eclectic mix of cars with some great racing. In Group 10, we saw two Roush Mustangs having a terrific battle for first. Group 6 always seems to be a crowd favorite at Watkins Glen, with the American muscle cars battling it out with the quick and nimble Jaguar and Porsches. The Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli brought huge fields of great cars and some very intense racing. Tommy Dreese had a great time winning in the TA race, and points leader Rafa Matos won a hard-fought battle in the TA2 class. The International GT Series keeps growing, and this year had some great battles throughout the field of modern Porsches and Ferraris. But it wasn't just about the racing at the track. Saturday, we had a huge car and motorcycle show in the infield, and they got to do parade laps around the track. Spectators could test their skills in the Jaguar Autocross or go on an off-road adventure in a brand new Land Rover or Range Rover in the Land Rover Off-Road Experience. And then, as always, we try to wrap up this great weekend with a Saturday night party so that we could wake up early Sunday morning to some more ground pounding, starting with the mixed group 90-minute Enduro. Then Sunday afternoon, the tiny Minis got to put on a huge show for the fans, and we set a record for the most cars in the Watkins Glen Victory Circle as Giant Mini legend Patty Hopkirk presented some awards. It was another great event at Watkins Glen International for the Hilliard U.S. Vintage Grand Prix. But now we are off to Virginia.
Speed Tour, the greatest show in road racing, returned to Virginia International Raceway for the Haycock Classic Gold Cup. What can I say but again, we love the VIR fans and the beautiful facility. SVRA brought scores of beautiful vintage race cars competing in several different groups. Alfa Romeo was the featured mark for this event, and we had an all-Alfa race on Sunday. Alfa Romeo also brought out their fleet of new cars for the spectators to get a chance to test one out in the autocross or on the full circuit. Friday night, we had our annual Gold Cup and V-Rock banquet, and Connie, the owner of VIR, awarded Travis Engen the much-coveted Gold Cup. Mazda Heritage brought out a huge field of vintage Miatas and again put on a great race. Saturday, Hagerty hosted a huge Cars and Caffeine car show and then parade laps around the track. This event marked the third and final V-Rock event of the 2019 season, and we were going to be able to crown some champions and give away some brand new Chapard watches. Willie T. Ribbs and Edward Savagian won in the A production class, and John Cloud won for the B production class. But Davy Jones and Wally Dallenbach tied for the B production pro class. International GT hosted a large field and had some great racing on this challenging circuit. The Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli saw some fantastic racing as usual. In the TA2 race, we saw points leader Mark Miller win in his prefix Dodge Challenger. In SGT, it was Tim Kesman with top honors. In GT, it was Steven Davison. And we honored John Bauckham with 100 Trans Am starts. But in the TA class, it was Boris Said and his Weaver Concepts Dodge Challenger that dominated the TA field. It was another great Haycock Classic Gold Cup at Virginia International Raceway. Of course, we will be back next year. We'll see you then. Tour, the greatest show in road racing, returned to Circuit of the Americas for the U.S. Vintage National Championship 2019. The COTA event marks the end of the SVRA Championship points race, and many of the classes and groups were going to be decided in Saturday's group races. Then Sunday, the pinnacle of American vintage racing, is the Gold Bell Helmet National Championship races. In International GT, Mark Sandrich seemed to have the overall edge, but the Maranello Cup was intense with Giano Torino, Barry Fromberg, Ben Bergeron, and Colin Cohen.
And it's just great fun. Love racing with these guys.
The Trans Am Series presented by Pirelli mixed the West Coast and the East Coast Championships at this event, and we had huge fields of cars in all classes. Brad McAllister and Anthony Honeywell came into the last race for the TA2 West Coast Championship with less than 5 points between them. Brad McAllister was able to finish ahead of Anthony and win the championship. The TA2 championship was also won by Mark Miller in his prefix Procure It Network Dodge Challenger. And in SGT, series newcomer Ken Twaits claimed his first victory. Adam Andretti claimed his first TA win in his new Weaver Concepts Dodge Challenger.
It's emotional, the only way to put it. There's just a lot going on, you know. First time I've ever raced with my wife, you know, she's nothing tragic. She just couldn't be here. I take care of our pets.
This is always a busy event for SVRA. Friday night, Ragoga hosted their Friday Night Fish Fry, while SVRA hosted a premiere for Willie T. Ribbs' new movie, Uppity, with a follow-up interview with Willie T. Saturday, Haggerty hosted the Cars and Caffeine Car Show in the infield, and those participants were given parade laps around this wonderful circuit. The Saturday SVRA races were intense in all groups. Saturday night, we had our series-ending banquet crowning our 2019 group champions, and we also crowned Scott Birkeland as our 2019 SVRA Driver of the Year. Our Grand Marshal, Al Unser, closed out the evening with some fantastic stories.
I'm just telling you, those other drivers were just stupid.
Sunday started the SVRA National Championship races for the much-coveted title of National Champion and the Gold Bell Helmet as the trophy. There were some fantastic races on Sunday, but one of the best races we have ever seen was in Group 6, A production, between Scott Borchetta and Jody O'Donnell. Scott won the race, passing on the last turn of the last lap to win the national championship.
That was a big goal this year, and Jody and I had a great race. We changed back and forth the lead all the way to the very last corner.
Winning this Gold Bell helmet means quite a bit to our competitors, and knowing the time and effort they put in to win this makes it even more special for us.
I've had a picture out of the magazine of this helmet since
since the first time I saw it in a magazine, stuck to my bathroom mirror. It's the first thing I see in the morning, it's the last thing I see at night, other than my beautiful wife. And I finally won one. So I'm gonna put it on my nightstand so it continues to be the first and last thing that I see.
It was another fantastic Speed Tour event at Circuit of the Americas. We'll see you next year. The 2019 Savannah Speed Classic presented by Mingledorff's was an absolute blast. This was the first time that SVRA and International GT was part of this event, and we had some fantastic cars in all groups to showcase for the wonderful crowds who came out to participate and enjoy such a unique and wonderful facility. The Grand Prize of America Circuit is a 1.9-mile, 10-turn circuit that is a combination of a street course that's also a road course that is part of the Weston Harbor Golf Resort and Spa in the shadow of downtown Savannah, Georgia in Hutchinson Island. It doesn't get much better than this. Thursday night, as a special treat for our drivers, we had the Savannah Police Department escort race cars over the bridge into downtown Savannah for a gathering at the city market with some great cars and even better food.
Wow. I mean, the police don't mess around here. They are amazing at what they did. Oh my God, what a coordinated effort. 61 Jaguar E-Type that I've been racing for about 15 years. Got a relationship with it actually way longer than that. It used to be a street car I put together when I was in college. And we're here at Savannah, downtown Savannah right now, just showing off the cars, and they got a track here in Hutchinson Island that's just an absolute blast to drive. Turn 1 is one of the most thrilling corners at any track I've driven. I've been driving for 25 years.
The Savannah Speed Classic offers some great perspective for the spectators to enjoy the cars on track, but also in the open paddocks, in the fan walks and hot laps, and some very nice BMW racing machines, all the while providing food trucks, vendors, and autograph sessions with our Grand Marshal, Lynn St. James. Hagerty hosted the Cars and Caffeine Car Show in the infield with some fantastic machines, and then they got to do some laps around the circuit. Saturday, we had the Savannah Children's Choir sing the national anthem before our Group 8 and 12B race. We had a great field of stock cars, small bore production cars, vintage American muscle cars, purpose-built race cars, and they put on a great show for the fans. In International GT, Ben Bergeron and his yellow Ferrari 458 did his best to keep Bill Riddell and Chris Ruppel in their Porsche GT3 Cup cars in his mirrors.
It's like frying bacon in the nude. It was fantastic. Had a good competition on the start. Chris messed up. I was able to get around him, and then he caught up with me, and he made a mistake on number 7 and went off, and so I was able to take the thing. It'd have been nose to tail all the way in with Chris. He did a good job.
Saturday night, SVRA hosted a very nice dinner at the Weston Resort with some of the best food you have ever eaten. Sunday morning, we had a huge mixed group and enduro race, which was one of the best vintage races I have seen in a while, with hard racing throughout the field. Won overall by 18-year-old Willis Warheide in his 1999 Lola LMP1 car. We worked very hard to enhance this event, and from what we heard from our drivers and spectators, it showed. We cannot wait to come back to the Savannah Speed Classic, brought to you by Mingledorff's, to make this event even bigger and better next year. See you then.